Eu vou ser muito rápido para passar a palavra, aliás, como tenho feito sempre. É um prazer muito grande ter estes dois autores também nesta sessão. E o tema o desafio que eu fiz dentro das fronteiras foi a família. E podia também ter sido a memória, na verdade, mas acho que fica muito bem. A família, essa fronteira que nós todos, com a qual temos que lidar. E eu desejo-vos um resto de boa sessão. Relembro que há outras atividades a acontecerem e que no próximo semana temos mais mesas, temos 2 prémios Nobel a virem visitar Óbidos, temos mesas incríveis, não se fixem só nos prémios Nobel, porque o programa este ano acho que vale mesmo a pena, mas agora vamos honrar os nossos autores com uma grande salva de palmas e muito obrigado. Obrigado a todos por estar.
Boa tarde, obrigado por terem vindo, sobretudo num dia de eleições, espero que já tenham votado ou que ainda vão votar. Temos aqui 2 autores que têm, apesar de tudo, muita coisa em comum. Marie Ndaye é francesa, é filha de uma professora de ciências francesa e de um pai senegalês. Foi criada pela mãe na periferia de Paris. Tem um irmão que foi ministro da Educação no governo de Elisabeth Borne em 2022, é o Pape. Começou a escrever aos 12 anos e publicou o primeiro livro aos 17, por insistência de Jérôme Landon, o editor de Beckett, nada menos. Eu vou depois pedir-lhe para contar essa história, que é uma história muito engraçada, como é que uma miúda de 17 anos chegou a publicar com o Jérôme Landon, uma grande figura da edição em França. Ganhou o Goncourt em 2009 com 3 Mulheres Poderosas, um livro que também está traduzido em Portugal, e tem um livro novo aqui entre nós, é La Divine, que foi finalista do Booker Prize e também de um prémio literário, talvez menos conhecido, o International Dublin Literary Award, o que faz uma ponte interessante, além de Beckett, claro, com o nosso outro convidado, que é Paul Murray. Paul Murray é de Dublin, publicou em 2003 An Evening of Long Goodbyes, não está traduzido em português, e tem agora traduzido o seu 4º livro, que é A Picada de Abelha. Este livro foi finalista também do Booker Prize, o melhor livro do ano de 2023, para o Washington Post e a Time, considerado literatura essencial para o The New Yorker. E temos o nosso tema, espero eu, que eles conversem, que eu me calo, que conversem sobre a família, é o tema desta mesa. O livro de Paul Murray, A Picada de Abelha, é um romance sobre os Barnes. Os Barnes são uma família das Midlands, na Irlanda, que sofre o embate da crise económica depois de um grande boom económico. A Irlanda teve, aliás, como Portugal, a queda em 2008, com o crash das bolsas internacionais e com as manigâncias que os bancos norte-americanos fizeram. É um romance trágico e também cómico. É contado por, à vez, as personagens principais do livro. A mãe, o pai, uma filha adolescente, pai de 18 anos, e o filho mais novo, um miúdo de 12 anos, que só quer é que a família esteja unida. E eu li o livro, claro, era a minha obrigação, e acho que o livro é sobre o passado que volta para obscurecer o nosso presente e também para condicionar a entrar no futuro. Mas já lá vamos. O romance de Marie Ndaye, La Divine, dá-nos a conhecer uma mulher que foi criada por uma mãe solteira, que se chamava La Divine. Ela chama-se Malinka, que por acaso eu sei que quer dizer pequenina nas línguas eslavas, no checo nomeadamente, mas mudou o nome para Clarice, para cortar com esse passado. A sua nova família não conhece a La Divine, a mãe, mas ela vai todos os meses ver em segredo a sua mãe, que era empregada de limpeza, aliás. Depois casa-se, tem uma nova família e quando é abandonada pelo marido, procura conforto junto de um homem que é um homem perigoso, um tal Richard, ou Richard, e chama lá Divina a filha. Há, por isso, um círculo familiar que se fecha assim. A prosa de Marie eu não sou crítico literário, nem tenho pretensões a ser, mas é uma prosa misteriosa. As histórias provocam uma sensação de inquietação. Começa-se a ficar inquieto, às vezes com pequenos pormenores. Há uma mala que se perde no aeroporto, está tudo a correr bem, e a mala desaparece e o leitor fica um bocado... não é em suspense, mas é inquieto, vá, pronto, para não estar aqui a falar o resto da tarde. E até somos obrigados a ter alguma empatia com as personagens mais terríveis, ou mesmo que não sejam terríveis, as mais desagradáveis, nós acabamos por, eu pelo menos, como leitor, por ter alguma empatia, compreendê-las. Vá. Os romances da Marie começam sempre com uma primeira frase que, enquanto leitor, eu acho que podia muito bem vir a meio do livro. É como se nós entrássemos nas histórias, já a história está a correr, está em inglês on the run. Não é a narrativa habitual que a história começa quando La Divine tinha 3 anos e depois vai por aí fora. Entra assim. Eu hei de lhe perguntar porque é que isso é feito assim, qual é a intenção de nos pôr como leitores a ler a meio da história. E até antes de irmos à família, perguntava já à Marie porque é que faz isso, porque é que entramos na história quando ela já está em curso. Qual est a sua intention?
Oui, vous avez bien décrit la manière dont je procède dans l'écriture. Je prends les personnages à un moment donné de leur vie et moi je sais ce qui précède. Je sais leur enfance, je sais leur adolescence, etc. Mais je ne la décris pas. Mais c'est très important dans la manière dont je travaille que je sache ce qui précède. Simplement, je ne l'écris pas, mais la matière dont je remplis mes personnages, elle procède de tout ce que je sais d'eux, même sans l'écrire. C'est très important lorsque je crée des gens, en fait. Je crée des gens, c'est très, très important que je sache ce qui précède le moment où je les décris sur le papier. C'est fondamental que je sache d'où ils viennent, quelle était leur enfance, etc. Même si je je n'écris pas ça, mais ça, c'est fondamental au sens où lorsqu'on crée des personnages, ça me semble très important qu'ils vivent vraiment, que ce soit des gens véritables, authentiques, et on ne peut pas créer des figures sans avoir une idée de leur enfance, je pense.
Mais vous savez, sabe logo o que é que vai acontecer na história. O leitor é que não.
Non, non, je ne sais pas. Je ne suis pas plus informée que le lecteur. Je ne sais pas ce qu'il va se produire en fait. Je laisse l'écriture me dire ce qu'il va en être de l'histoire. L'écriture, elle crée sa dynamique. L'écriture elle-même, elle m'aide à réaliser ce qu'il va se produire dans l'histoire. Je ne sais pas, moi, lorsque je commence l'histoire, je ne sais pas ce qu'il va en être. Je ne sais jamais la fin. Je ne sais pas ce qu'il va se produire. C'est l'écriture qui crée ça aussi. L'écriture, elle aide l'imagination. L'imagination vient de l'écriture et vice-versa, quoi.
Très intéressant. Paul Murray, it's the same way with you?
So, firstly, it's lovely to be here in Obidos. I'd like to take an opportunity to thank the translator. This is my first trilingual interview. It's quite an adventure. So wherever you are, translator, I appreciate it. I always have a plan for the book at the start. One of my favorite quotes is the satirist H.L. Mencken has this quote: for every thorny, complicated problem, there's a clear and simple solution, which is wrong. And I think that that's sort of what you're getting with the book. You start off with an idea, and I'll develop a plan, and I'll have some kind of a idea of how it's all going to kind of play out. But then when I start writing it, I write the books physically. The first draft is always written, on paper with a pen. It always deviates from my plan, and I think a part of the writing process for me, an important part of it for me, is to escape my sort of everyday self, my everyday ego, my everyday opinions, and try and get to something deeper. And that's really what the books turn out to be about. So often they'll go in a different direction to what I expect. And that's the beauty of it. I think it's important that that when you're writing, that the writing surprises you. If you're not surprised by your writing, the reader is definitely not going to be surprised by your writing. So you're always trying, or I'm always trying to find a way to kind of break out of my own kind of banal kind of preconceived notions and do something strange.
But how do you keep the interest or the characters in a book of 700 pages?
How do I stay interested?
To lose your mind?
Do I lose my mind? I lost it a long time ago, Antonio. It's like, if someone sees it, please give it back to me. There's a reward. You can't, you need to lose your mind to be a writer, I think. You may disagree, maybe, but no, it's really, like with this book in particular, I really felt a lot of empathy and love for the characters, even the bad ones, and they kind of continued to surprise me. And So it was a journey. I kept on being surprised by the bad decisions that they repeatedly made and the terrible places they ended up being. But yeah.
Ok. Vamos então à família. E à família, entramos pelo livro do Paul Murray, Picada de Abelha, porque ele é de facto uma história de família, não é? Na base. Mas é também uma história de uma sociedade num determinado momento. A família é esse resumo, esse microcosmos para si, quando quer falar de tudo.
Well, I didn't set out to kind of make a bunch of points, or express opinions. I really wanted to tell the story of this, family in a very boring part of Ireland. When you think about Ireland, you imagine like the waves hitting the cliffs, or whatever it might be. The Midlands are sort of like a flat, quite, dull part, not a romantic part of the country at all. And this family, it's a family that's stopped being able to kind of communicate with each other, and they don't sort of believe in the family anymore. And the only way they can see a future for themselves is to escape the family. Like the family is this trap that they need to escape. And that's part of the reason for that is the past, and a part of it is the present, the economic situation that they're in. So the crash, the 2008 crash in Ireland went on for 6 years. It was an absolute punishment. It was a terrible time. A lot of young people, in particular, left the country. Businesses closed down. There were suicides. It was a really bad time. And the family is where these abstract economic ideas happen. This is where it all kind of comes home to roost. So the dad in the family has this car business, and during the boom, which preceded the crash, a car business was a very good business to be in, because Ireland went from being a very poor country to suddenly becoming very, very rich. And the first thing people did was go out and buy a car, exactly, because what better symbol of your own individuality and autonomy and power than a car, It's the ultimate sort of symbol of the individual in the 21st century. So everyone went out and bought a car. If you were a car dealer, you got very, very rich. But when the crash came, the first thing everyone stopped buying was cars. So the sales just plummeted. And this man who put a lot of faith in the system, if you're a good person, if you work hard, then you will be rewarded, you will have a good life, you'll have a secure life for yourself and for your children. But the business crashes, and suddenly all of the foundations that the family rests on, it's a wealthy family that's built kind of a wall of illusions, or bought a wall of illusions, to cover over kind of all of the cracks within the family. All of those illusions start to kind of disintegrate, like in Cinderella. I don't know if you've got the Cinderella story yeah, you do, okay, great, that's handy. Everything starts, the carriage turns back into a pumpkin, and the ghosts start to rise up out of the ground. And because it's a family that's not good at communicating, they don't really have the equipment to deal with that. They don't really trust each other enough to help each other, so the whole thing starts to fall apart. And that's what, I think that's what happened in Ireland. Ireland put a lot of stock in economy. When the money came in the late 90s, early 2000s, everybody thought this is a way to escape our past, which was dark history, a troubled history. A way to
Same as ours.
Same, right, okay. And then when the money came in, here's a way for us to distance ourselves from it and never think of it again. But the past always comes back, and that's what happened.
Marie, a família é importante nos seus livros. É um sítio para onde foge, ou é um sítio de onde foge?
La famille, dans mes romans, je pense que c'est un concentré du monde. Dans la famille, on trouve tous les sentiments sentiments qui nous habitent. On trouve l'amour, la joie, la haine, la rancœur. On trouve tous les sentiments qui font que nous sommes des êtres vivants, des êtres humains. Et la famille, elle est, dans mes livres, elle est une sorte de résumé de la société, en fait, dans le sens où on y retrouve tout dans la famille, finalement.
Eu estava a esquecer-me, a propósito de família, foi a sua mãe que atendeu um telefonema do Jérôme Landon. Quer contar-nos essa história, a história do seu primeiro livro publicado?
Oui. Alors, j'écrivais depuis longtemps déjà. J'écrivais depuis l'âge de 8 ans, 9 ans, 10 ans. Enfin bref, voilà, depuis l'enfance. Et quand j'ai eu 17 ans, j'avais écrit un livre dont j'estimais qu'il était montrable, présentable, alors que les précédents, je sentais que c'était pas vraiment ça, quoi. Voilà, c'était pas vraiment montrable. Et là, ce premier livre édité, j'ai senti qu'il avait de la valeur. Et je l'ai envoyé aux éditions de Minuit, qui étaient donc à l'époque dirigées par Jérôme Lindon. Et les éditions de Minuit, c'était l'éditeur de Beckett, de Duras, de Sarraute, Rob Griel, nouveau roman. Mais moi, j'avais jamais rien lu de tout ça. Je connaissais rien du tout. J'étais très naïve. Et si je l'ai présenté aux éditions de Minuit, c'est parce que donc en 1984, Marguerite Duras venait de recevoir le prix Goncourt pour L'Amant, son livre L'Amant. Donc j'ai vu ça voilà, j'ai été informée de ça, mais j'avais rien lu. J'étais vraiment une sorte d'innocente, quoi, dans l'histoire littéraire. Voilà. Et Jérôme Lindon a appelé ma mère le lendemain du jour où j'avais remis mon manuscrit, et je n'avais rien dit à ma mère, donc elle n'a rien compris de l'histoire.
Et elle ne savait pas.
Non, elle ne savait pas. Et puis 2 jours plus tard, Jérôme Lindon est venu m'attendre à la sortie de mon lycée pour le contrat, etc. Mais j'étais vraiment une sorte d'innocente, oui, de naïve, vraiment, oui.
Et Jérôme Lindon a compris que c'était avec une jeune fille qu'il parlait?
Oui, mais je pense qu'il n'était pas très à l'aise avec les jeunes filles. Enfin, c'était un monde différent du sien, c'est-à-dire qu'il avait affaire à des auteurs, des messieurs, voilà, etc. Donc, nous étions 2 présences qui ne se comprenaient pas, en fait. Enfin, qu'on a appris, hein, les premiers temps, on était deux êtres qui n'avaient rien à voir l'un avec l'autre.
Ça doit être drôle.
Oui, c'était drôle en fait, mais moi j'étais tranquille. Hein. Je pense qu'il était plus impressionné. Moi j'étais pas du tout impressionnée puisque ça ne représentait rien.
Et quand
dans mon monde.
il a vous cherché au lycée, il doit
Oui.
penser c'était une maître ou quelque chose.
Oui, il ne savait pas qui il allait attendre à la sortie du lycée. Et moi, j'étais mal à l'aise parce que mes copines me disaient « Mais attends, mais c'est qui ce vieux type qui est là, etc. » Enfin, j'étais mal à l'aise, mais juste parce que c'était un vieux monsieur qui allait m'attendre au lycée, mais je n'étais pas impressionnée grâce ou à cause de mon ignorance de la maison, minuit, du monde littéraire, etc. J'étais vraiment brute, mais enfin brutale, mais dans le sens de voilà, je n'avais rien à voir avec ça, quoi. Donc j'étais brutale aussi, dans un sens.
Eu imagino a cara do Jérôme Landon quando lhe saiu uma miúda de 17 anos do liceu e ele iria publicar. Depois vieram muito mais livros. Paul.
Oui, et puis juste pour finir là-dessus, la rencontre avec Landon, maintenant c'est très différent, mais en 1984, c'était aussi, je pense, déstabilisant pour lui de rencontrer une jeune fille noire, métisse, mais voilà, dite noire. Et à l'époque, il n'y avait pas les écrivains noirs, c'était les Antillais, c'était les Brésiliens, mais le seul écrivain noir qui existait encore, c'était Senghor, qui était un Sénégalais, mais il n'y avait pas d'écrivains d'origine arabe, d'origine noire, etc. Je pense aussi qu'il a dû apprendre ça. Enfin, c'était aussi, je pense, déconcertant dans son monde d'avoir affaire à une jeune fille noire. Ça n'existait pas, en fait.
C'était une première.
À l'époque, oui. Oui.
Paul, este livro foi escrito ou pensado depois do Covid, do confinamento, certo?
I started the book at the end of 2017. So I felt very lucky to be in the middle of the process during COVID. Like it was a kind of, even though the book is quite a sad book, it was a kind of refuge for me from all of the chaos taking place outside. I have friends who were trying to start books during COVID, and it was impossible for them because it was just too much upheaval.
3 years and a half for writing.
5 years. 5 years. Yeah. It took a long time.
And
yeah.
your family, how they managed that?
What did they think of me spending 5 years writing a book? You know, I mean, they're used to it at this stage, I guess. They don't ask questions. They just shake their heads. And no, it's like I won a prize last year. I won the Nero Book Award. And Nero is a I don't know if you have it here. It's a chain of cafes. And one of the prizes was I got a gold card. I could go into any Nero branch and get a free coffee. And like not a pastry, but just a coffee. But so I came home and I was showing this card to my son, and for the first time he was like, "Wow, that's the first time he respected the idea of being a writer." He's like, "Okay, there's a point. You can get free coffee." My family is very, very supportive. Like the family in the book obviously has a lot of problems. I'm blessed with the family. Like we are all, we talk to each other. My son sometimes, he's 14 now, and a couple of years ago he started saying something that scared me, which is he said, "I want to be a writer." And I thought back to my own father. My father was a professor of literature, and he didn't want me to be a writer because he'd seen so many writers in Ireland having terrible lives. He knew quite a lot about how it works, and it's difficult to be a writer, psychologically and just financially. My journey to writing was I was working in a bookshop in the city in Dublin, and I met a writer called John Boyne, who at that point was just a bookseller, and he was just about to publish his first novel. And he'd been to a creative writing master's in England, in a university called East Anglia. And like Kazuo Ishiguro had been to this university, and Ian McEwan, famous people. So he said, "You should apply there." And I applied there, and I met a wonderful professor she's a wonderful writer called Ali Smith. And Ali Smith really liked the thing I was working on, which is my first book. And I remember coming home to Dublin after the course had finished, and I was back living with my parents, and I'd run out of money, and I was like 26, I think, and my dad was driving me to the train station one night to go into the city, and he said to me, bear in mind, professor of literature, he said, "You've given this your best shot. It's really time to stop and get a real job." And the very next day, I got an email from, Ali Smith, the Scottish writer who's a genius, had been telling her editor about the book I was working on. And the editor wrote to me and said, "Oh, Ali's told me about your book. We'd love to see it." I sent him a chapter of the book. He said, "We want to publish it." And it's not as wonderful a story as Mary's story, but everything changed because of John, who I met in the bookshop, and because of Ali, who I met in the university. And so there's a lot of luck involved. So when my son says to me, "I'd like to be a writer," and I say to him, "Have you thought about investment banking, or crypto or something like that?"
Dentist.
Dentist is great. But I restrain myself and I say, "That's great. You should do it. You should do it."
And you will have it at home until 60.
Mais les enfants, oui, c'est pour rebondir sur ce que vient de dire Paul avec son fils. Quand mes enfants étaient jeunes et qu'on leur demandait la profession de leur mère, ils disaient « Maman, mais elle fait rien. » Parce que j'écrivais lorsqu'ils étaient à l'école, donc ils me voyaient jamais écrire, donc dans leurs yeux, je faisais rien, mais ils le disaient fièrement. Hein. C'était pas un problème que leur mère ne fasse rien, mais voilà, je faisais rien. Et j'aimais bien ça aussi, que le fait d'écrire, ce soit rien dans leurs yeux, que ce soit pas quelque chose de gratifiant, d'important, juste rien.
Eu já falei logo ao princípio de algumas características da escrita de Marie, e há uma característica da escrita, ou pelo menos deste livro, da Picada de Abelha, do Paul Murray, que me intriga. A história é contada à vez por cada um dos elementos da família. E há um elemento fundamental, é a mãe, a Imelda, fala, porque é na primeira pessoa, fala sem pontuação. Sem pontos, sem vírgulas, sem ponto e vírgula, sem 2 pontos, o que dificulta um bocadinho, até se entrar, dificulta-se. Eu gostava de saber porque é que isso acontece. Why you don't have punctuation, Imelda?
Yeah, so the family is it's a middle-class family, and the father has been to university, he's very well educated, and he meets Imelda through, one of the major parts of the book is like, how does this very unlikely couple come together? Imelda's from a very different background. She's from a very difficult family background. There's a lot of poverty, there's violence, and she's kind of escaped from this into a place which she thinks is going to be safe and secure. She thinks money will be able to protect her from all of the things that terrorized her in her youth. And I started writing, I had all these plans, like I said, but each section, every time I'd start a section, a new chapter, like a new person telling the story, I'd know what was going to happen, but I didn't know what the character would sound like. And it was always kind of a tense moment, because I think to myself, well, is this going to work? Do I have a voice for this person? And for Imelda, it starts off punctuated. I started writing it like punctuated, like normally. I wasn't trying to write something experimental, but she's very, very stressed. The family are driving to like this very important dinner, like a kind of an honorary dinner for her father-in-law, who was a successful businessman, and they need the dinner to go well. And she's in the car, and she's very, very freaked out and anxious. And I was trying to write this and punctuating it as normal, and the punctuation just felt wrong for the situation she was in, and for the kind of person that she was. Like, she doesn't think in, formal paragraphs, like her husband does think like that. He thinks if you have like a university education,
and
then
speed.
And speed. Well, she's like, there's a French way to think, coincé, is that right? When you're cornered, you feel like trapped, and she's really like, she feels like she's just like, Dickie, the husband, thinks that he kind of knows the score. He knows how the world works. He's a successful businessman, and whatever bad things happen, he's not the kind of, like, nothing really bad is going to happen to him or his family because he's middle class, But she knows what can go wrong in a life and a family's life, and she can see that approaching.
How to be poor.
Yeah, exactly. How to be poor. What it's like being poor. What it's like to open the fridge and there's nothing there. So I really wanted to kind of get across that sense of pressure and that sense of being hunted. And the punctuation, which to me, it didn't really feel like a big deal, but it was just like a way of trying to get into her head and follow her thought process. And she thinks in this kind of quite vivid way. She sees things kind of in a very vivid, kind of emotional way. And I think that's the part of the book that I'm proudest of. She's the character in the book who's most different to me, and I felt a lot of the book starts. The first 2 chapters of the book are told by the 2 kids, and the kids see the parents in this very reductive way, in the way that kids see their parents, in this kind of one-dimensional way. They think, oh, my parents are so boring. Nothing has ever happened to them. They have no past. They're just obsessed with money. They're smug, kind of one-dimensional people. And then when you go back into Imelda's story, you realize she does have a past, and it's like it's a serious story. And when I was writing her section, I was going through the same experience. She was kind of coming to life for me, and I was seeing these different parts of her. And she ended up like being, of all the surprises that I got in the course of writing the book, that was the biggest surprise and the best surprise.
Há outro aspecto no livro de Paul Murray, que é uma das personagens, dos elementos da família, é uma miúda de 18 anos, 18 years, Cass. E eu vi uma entrevista, uma sessão, ao fim e ao cabo, como esta, com o Paul Murray no YouTube, e há uma miúda lá do meio da assistência, de 18 anos também, que diz: eu gostava de saber como é que o Paul conseguiu tão bem pôr-se na cabeça de uma rapariga adolescente e tratou por middle-aged man, how a middle-aged man, que foi muito cómico, e aquela coisa para nós aos 40, para uma miúda de 18 anos, somos todos velhos, não é? E isso faz algum esforço para se pôr na cabeça das suas personagens?
Well, I think that's what novels are all about. They're about empathy. You know, that's the power that a novel has that other art forms don't necessarily have. You're going into someone else's mind and you're telling someone else's story. And the beauty of reading a book is that you can make a connection with someone who appears to be completely different to you. And I guess, you know, I didn't want the book to have a message or anything like that, but if there is a message, it's that, like, you know, I mean, particularly now, like there's so much division in the world, and we're constantly being told, you know, these people are different, you can never understand them, they're awful, they're hateful people, and, you know, only people like us can understand each other, you know, but I think, like, the whole point of a novel is to sort of remind us that, like, for all of the differences, the, you know, superficial differences or deep differences, there's a profounder commonality. You know, we all experience the same vulnerability and loneliness. We need the same things. You know, we're all people, right? And that's what books are for. So I think that if I wasn't able to write in the voice of an 18-year-old girl, I wouldn't be a very good writer. You know, I think that's just part of the job, is to try and. So I mean, the joke I usually tell, if people ask that question, is do you want to come in? Well, the joke I tell is, like, so when Nabokov was writing Lolita, he would sit on the back of the bus with the schoolgirls and he'd sort of be there with his notebook. And you can't do that anymore, you know? That's not something that people will tolerate. But I think, like, the reality is that, like, you know, that's my job when I sit down at my desk. And I was talking earlier about trying to break out of my own way of thinking. And that's what it is. That's what I'm trying to break through. Like, just trying to break through all of the. We all live day by day thinking we're the center of the universe, you know, and one of the ways we break out, we escape from that is that's a lonely place to be, at the center of the universe, you know. And one of the ways we sort of break out of that is through reading and through writing, and that's my job.
Right. Et vous traitez bien vos personnages?
Oui, enfin, je crois avoir compris ça de ce que vient de nous dire Paul Murray, c'est que lorsqu'on écrit, on est le tout, on est le monde entier, on est jeune homme, jeune fille, on est chien, on est même chaise, enfin, je veux dire, on est tout lorsqu'on écrit, et notre individualité, finalement, n'importe plus. On oublie qu'on est Paul, Marie, etc., dans un monde. On devient tout, on devient le monde entier lorsqu'on écrit. Enfin, du moins, on essaye. Et c'est difficile, mais c'est ce à quoi je tends, c'est ce que j'espère faire, d'oublier qui je suis, moi, dans ma vie propre, etc., pour devenir, mille êtres humains qui ne me ressemblent en rien. Des humains, mais aussi des animaux, enfin tout, quoi.
Très bien. Não sei, faltam 10 minutos, mais ou menos. Não sei se querem fazer alguma pergunta ao Paul Murray ou à Marie Ndeye, porque senão eu faço mais uma. É um risco. Paul, estamos a viver um momento no mundo e também na Europa, um mundo em que a extrema-direita está a crescer, há a crise ambiental, qualquer dia o planeta estoura. Acha que a família pode ser um local de refúgio, embora as suas personagens estejam todas a tentar fugir dela? Ele vai para um bunker, não é?
Well, bankers can't escape either. You know, there's no way to escape the climate change. Climate change is a really interesting problem because we have to work together. Like everybody has to work together for it to be changed, to be fixed. You can't solve it with individualism. You can't buy, a way out of it. I think family is a place where, well, I think so. The dad in the book becomes very disillusioned with the world at large and like the town that he lives in, and he has this fantasy that he can withdraw the family, and he tries to build like a bunker in the woods, like he becomes like a prepper, and he has this idea that he can sort of recede from society and protect his family from whatever is coming, and like that's something that I can understand why that is tempting. When the world seems so full of hatred, that you might want to just put up the walls, and hide away. But it doesn't work. Like you can't survive just as a family. And the point of a family is to, you don't want to keep your family with you all the time. I don't want my son to be living with me when he's 60. If he is, that's fine. But as a parent, you want to give your children whatever it is they need to go out and be the best people they can be and be happy. That's what it's for. So I think when I was writing the book, I felt like a lot of sadness and fear because the world that we're leaving to our children is so has been so, I don't want to say ruined, but the destruction of it, which continues like every day. You see, like if you read the newspapers, which sometimes I wish I didn't, the destruction continues and the stupidity and the greed just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And the short-term thinking is just like staggering. And it's hard to be hopeful for your children's future. But I think there's a great book by Erich Fromm, who was like this philosopher, German philosopher, who wrote this great book called The Art of Loving, and he talks about like the parents' role. The parents' role is to make the children feel like the world is a place that they can belong. And if you're a parent who's very anxious and fearful of the world, you'll pass that anxiety down to your children, So I want to it doesn't help to be frightened, it doesn't help to be pessimistic, You have to kind of find a way to give your child a sense that there's a future, There has to be a future.
Marie, je sais que vous avez 3 enfants, 30 ans.
Mais la famille, enfin, moi je pense qu'il faut sortir de la famille, sortir du groupe, sortir de ceux qui nous ressemblent trop. Ce que j'adore dans ce genre de rencontres, justement, c'est que c'est pas la famille, c'est pas nos amis, vous êtes tous là des gens différents de nous, et ce qui m'effraie, justement, et c'est ce que prône l'extrême droite en France. En tout cas, c'est le repli sur notre groupe, quoi. La famille, les proches, et ce que j'aime en littérature, c'est qu'on a affaire à des gens qui ne nous sont pas proches. Paul Murray, je sais pas qui, je sais pas la vie qu'il mène en Irlande, je sais pas la vie que vous menez ici, mais j'aime apprendre et j'aime sortir de mon groupe, quoi, de mes proches, au contraire. Donc le repli sur les enfants, non, surtout pas, quoi, surtout pas. La famille, ça c'est réducteur, la famille, elle enferme aussi. Et moi, j'ai toujours dit à mes enfants qu'ils sortent de ça, du groupe, enfin, du clan, voilà, qu'ils sortent du clan. Jamais de clan, quoi, surtout pas.
Merci. Acho que podemos terminar. Agradeço-vos a presença, agradeço também ao Paul e à Marie.
Merci. Merci beaucoup, Antonio. Merci. Merci à vous.